The hidden pain of attachment conflict. When the need for connection collides with the fear of emotional exposure, this archetype centers on people whose nervous systems associate closeness with danger. They crave intimacy deeply, yet fear it instinctively. The core paradox, the very thing they long for, connection, safety, love, activates the same internal alarm system designed to protect them from pain. This creates an anxious loop of pursuit, withdrawal, longing, and self-blame. You want closeness, but the moment it starts to appear, something inside you tightens, your chest constricts, your thoughts accelerate, your body becomes alert, like it's bracing for impact. You crave intimacy the way a thirsty person craves water, but when it's finally offered, you hesitate, as if the water might burn. You're not confused about what you want. You're confused about why wanting it feels so dangerous. You imagine connection constantly, deep conversations, being seen without performing, being chosen without chasing. But when someone actually gets close, when they text back quickly, when they ask how you really feel, when they stay, your nervous system doesn't read it as safety, it reads it as risk. So you pull back, you overthink, you detach, you convince yourself you don't care, and then, when the distance grows, you ache again. This is the loop, the anxious loop. You chase connection, you panic when it arrives, you retreat to feel safe, you feel abandoned by your own retreat. And somewhere inside that cycle, a quiet belief forms, something must be wrong with me. But here's the truth most people never hear. You don't fear intimacy because you're broken. You fear it because intimacy once came with a cost. The same system that longs for closeness is the same system that learned closeness was dangerous. That is the paradox, and it governs far more of your life than you realize. 2. Definition and psychological authority. Deep dive, approximately 3 to 4 minutes. At the center of this pattern is attachment trauma, specifically anxious and fearful avoidant attachment. As children, we don't learn intimacy through words. We learn it through felt experience. We learn whether closeness soothes or overwhelms, whether dependence is safe or shameful, whether being seen leads to comfort or rejection. When caregivers are inconsistent, sometimes loving, sometimes distant, sometimes attentive, sometimes emotionally unavailable, the child's nervous system cannot form a stable expectation. This creates attachment ambivalence. The brain learns, I need connection to survive, but connection is unpredictable. Neurologically, this wires the limbic system to associate intimacy with threat activation. The amygdala flags closeness as a potential danger. The default mode network, the brain's narrative generator, fills the silence with catastrophic interpretations. They'll leave. They'll see the real me. I'll need too much. I'll lose control. This is compounded by emotional conditioning, where affection was paired with anxiety, obligation, or abandonment. So intimacy becomes charged, not peaceful, not grounding, charged. You want closeness, but your body prepares for loss. And because the nervous system always overrides logic, no amount of self-awareness alone dissolves the fear. This is not a mindset problem. It's a regulated safety problem. The deepest cost of this pattern is not loneliness, it's self-betrayal. Because every time you suppress your need for closeness, every time you pretend you're fine alone, every time you detach to feel safe, you abandon a part of yourself that is still reaching. Carl Jung once wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." But there is another burden rarely named, the unlived emotional life of the self. You learn to ration intimacy, to accept fragments instead of fullness, to tolerate ambiguity instead of clarity. You become skilled at longing quietly, and over time a silent grief forms, not for a specific person but for a version of life that feels perpetually just out of reach. The grief of wanting love but fearing dependence, wanting to be known but hiding your depth, wanting to stay but always preparing to leave. This creates existential tension. Simple moments become complicated. A text message becomes a test. A date becomes an evaluation. A relationship becomes a battlefield between desire and defense. The core fear underneath it all is not abandonment. It is emotional exposure without safety. The fear that if you fully open, there will be no one there to catch you. This pattern does not stay abstract. It shows up everywhere. You might recognize it in these ways. You crave deep connection but lose interest once it's stable. Calm feels unfamiliar. Your nervous system confuses peace with emptiness. You overanalyze intimacy. Tone, timing, pauses all become data points. You are never fully present. You oscillate between emotional intensity and withdrawal. You open suddenly, then disappear to recover from the vulnerability. You feel suffocated by closeness, yet abandoned by distance. No position feels right for long. You attract emotionally unavailable partners. Their distance feels familiar, even reassuring, until it hurts. You minimize your needs to avoid being too much, then resent yourself for feeling unseen. These are not personality traits. They are coping strategies. They are the nervous system attempting to balance two competing survival imperatives: stay connected, stay safe. The first step of healing is not changing behavior. It is witnessing the pattern without judgment, not asking, "What's wrong with me?" but asking, "What did this protect me from?" Because once the pattern is seen clearly, it loosens its grip. Healing this pattern does not mean forcing yourself into intimacy. It means retraining your nervous system to experience closeness as safe. This begins with inner reparenting, learning to meet your own emotional needs without self-abandonment. It continues with somatic regulation, teaching the body that presence does not equal danger, and it deepens through shadow work, integrating the parts of you that learn to survive through distance. The goal is not to eliminate fear. The goal is to develop enough internal safety that fear no longer runs the relationship. As philosopher Martin Buber wrote, "All real living is meeting, but meeting requires presence, and presence requires safety." You are not afraid of intimacy because you are incapable of love. You are afraid because your system learned love had conditions. Healing is not about becoming fearless. It is about becoming whole, where the part of you that longs and the part of you that protects can finally coexist without war. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be met, first by yourself. And when that happens, intimacy stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like home. If this resonated, share it with someone who lives inside this loop. And remember, awareness is not the end of healing. It is the door.